Matthew Grant was working late into the night in his office located on the top floor of a skyscraper in Washington, D.C. While reviewing contracts for a major real estate development project, he also reached for a stack of new documents delivered by his secretary. Even at 45, his passion for work knew no decline. "Mr. Grant, it's 2 a.m. now. Should I arrange your car?" The night shift secretary timidly approached him. "No need. I still have work to do," Matthew responded without lifting his eyes. His voice lacked emotion. Matthew's work ethic was legendary. He was the first to arrive in the morning and the last to leave at night. He never took vacations and was rarely seen in social settings. Yet, his exceptional management skills were recognized by everyone in the Washington, D.C. real estate industry. The city lights shone beyond the massive glass windows, spreading like stars across the night sky. However, this beautiful view sometimes triggered the memory of flames from 30 years ago. Matthew gently gazed at an old photo he took from his desk drawer. It showed his sister Sophia at age 12, smiling broadly. The edge of the photo was scorched by the fire, symbolizing the scars in his heart. That night came without warning. Matthew, at 15, woke up to a sudden noise. The room was already filled with smoke. He desperately ran to the hallway, but the fire spread faster than expected. "Sophia." He tried to head to his sister's room, but thick smoke and intense heat blocked him. He couldn't see anything and could barely breathe. Before he knew it, firefighters were dragging him outside. "Dad." "Mom." "Sophia." His cries were drowned out by the sirens of the fire engines. All he could do was stare blankly as his home was engulfed in flames. The bodies of his parents and sister were found after the fire was extinguished. Matthew was taken in by relatives, but he never opened his heart again. The guilt of not being able to save his young sister tightened around his heart. He never wanted to experience the pain of losing loved ones again. This resolve shaped his life. He immersed himself in academics and graduated from college with top honors. He plunged into the real estate industry and quickly made a name for himself. Eliminating emotions, he climbed the business ladder with his cool judgment as his only weapon. His mansion employed several staff members, led by the long-serving head maid Eva Smith. However, he kept conversations with them to a minimum. The butler silently took care of his personal needs, and the maids quietly maintained the house. That was the order Matthew desired. "Sir, there's an important call for you." At the subordinate's voice, Matthew looked away from the photo. Suppressing his emotions, he returned to his usual ruthless expression. That was his way of living. Never let anyone close. Never lose anyone again. He had kept that vow for 30 years. Outside the window, the dawn's light was gradually spreading. A new day was about to begin. But inside Matthew Grant's heart, the clock had stopped 30 years ago. Before the hustle and bustle of the city began, Olivia Walker woke up on a small bench on the street. Having just turned 32, she had been a fine arts teacher at a private school in Virginia until 6 months ago. Now homeless, this bench was her bed. "Good morning, Dad," she whispered, touching the silver pendant around her neck, which held the last photo of her father. From her small backpack, she carefully took out her sketchbook and art supplies, her treasures that she could not part with even after becoming homeless. She used to tell her students that art is the language of the soul. For her, drawing was synonymous with living. She prepared herself in the bathroom of a 24-hour coffee shop a few blocks away. The staff, sensing her situation, occasionally offered her free coffee. Olivia always kept herself clean and maintained her manners with everyone. Another new day is starting. She took a deep breath and headed to her usual spot at the corner of a street lined with skyscrapers, where she tried to make a living by drawing portraits. While setting up her sketchbook, Olivia remembered the time 6 months ago when her father, Noah Walker, a professor at the University of Virginia's art department, fell seriously ill. "Ms. Walker, there is a treatment." However, the doctor's words still rang in her ears. The high cost of treatment. A new treatment method not covered by insurance. Still, she wanted to save her father. "Dad, I'll figure something out." While continuing her teaching job, Olivia cut back on her expenses and used all her savings for his treatment. She maxed out her credit cards and even put her childhood home as collateral. But it was still not enough. "Olivia, it's okay now," her father had said with a gentle smile. "I don't want to ruin your life too." But Olivia couldn't accept his words. Her father was everything to her. Her mother had passed away shortly after her birth, and her father had raised her alone. Her passion for art and her sense of mission as a teacher came from him. However, her father eventually passed away, leaving only debts behind. The school did not try to understand her situation. Gradually, her life became more impoverished. "I'll draw a portrait for $20. She set up a small sign and waited for passers-by. Drawing 2 or 3 portraits a day was good. Yet, she never gave up. "Art houses a soul." That was always her father's saying. So she poured her soul into each portrait. Her focus while drawing was no different from when she was teaching, perhaps it was even more sincere now. Amid the chilling wind, Olivia set up her art materials. Today, she was ready to capture another moment of someone's life in her sketchbook. This was both her pride as an artist and her only way to connect with her father's memory. In the headquarters building of Grant Enterprises, located in a prime area of Washington, D.C. The boardroom on the top floor was about to conclude its meeting. "Mr. Grant, there's one last item on the agenda," a senior director cautiously began. Matthew looked up silently. "It's about the succession. Considering the future of our company." "The meeting is over," Matthew said coldly and stood up. The executives looked perplexed, but none dared to stop him. Back in his office, Matthew stood in front of a large window. Indeed, the issue of succession was unavoidable. At 45, it was time to think about the future of the real estate empire he had built. But whom to entrust it to? He had only a distant cousin as a relative, and he was not inclined to leave the management to her. There were capable employees, but he hesitated to entrust everything to someone not related by blood. "Sir, the preparations for the next meeting are..." The secretary entered the room, but upon seeing Matthew's stern expression, she quickly withdrew. The next morning, Matthew, intending to go to the office earlier than usual, suddenly stopped on his way to the headquarters building. On the sidewalk in front of the building, a young woman was sitting with a sketchbook in her hands, drawing with a focused expression. Normally, such a scene on the street would not have caught his attention. However, there was something special about this woman. Her blouse was immaculate, and her skirt neatly pressed. Despite drawing on the street, her appearance maintained a sense of dignity. Above all, her earnest gaze captivated him. Her sincere expression while facing her artwork reminded him of the pure gaze his sister Sophia had when she looked at art books. To his own surprise, Matthew found his feet moving on their own. "May I see your drawing?" The woman looked up in surprise. When Matthew glanced at her artwork, he recognized an extraordinary talent. Each line seemed to be infused with soul. "How much for this portrait?" $20. Her voice carried a dignity that belied her financial struggles. "Your name?" "Olivia Walker." At that moment, something stirred inside Matthew. A slight creaking sensation in the doors of his heart that had been closed to anyone for 30 years. And at the same time, a conviction that the answer to his long-standing dilemma appeared before him. "I am Matthew Grant." He offered his business card. "I would like to have a talk with you. Would you come to my office?" Olivia looked puzzled, but the man's demeanor carried an undeniable authority. She quietly nodded and began to pack up her art supplies. Matthew watched her, unaware that this was a fateful meeting. In the top floor's reception room of Grant Enterprises, Olivia sat with a nervous expression. The hustle and bustle of the city felt distant through the large windows. "Bring us some coffee," Matthew instructed his secretary. His voice was as emotionless as when he had spoken on the street. "Ms. Walker." Matthew began in a businesslike tone as he sat in a high-end leather chair. I want to hear my proposal. Olivia nodded silently. Overwhelmed by the luxurious surroundings, she sat up straight. First, I want to hear about you. Matthew began dispassionately, his eyes on the documents. What were you doing before you became homeless? I was an art teacher at a private school in Virginia. Olivia responded quietly. Why are you homeless? Matthew's piercing gaze turned towards her. Olivia hesitated but decided to answer truthfully. It was my father's medical bills. An expensive treatment not covered by insurance. He passed away, and I lost everything. Matthew observed her silently. The dignity of a teacher. The decisiveness to sacrifice everything for her father. And above all, the strength to maintain her passion for art despite adversity. I need an heir. Matthew finally broached the main subject after a pause. And I want you to bear my child. The secretary, carrying the coffee, stopped in her tracks. Olivia's eyes widened. It's a surrogacy agreement, of course, with all the legal formalities. Matthew signaled the secretary to leave quickly. Me. Olivia's voice trembled. The terms are as follows. Matthew continued, his tone devoid of emotion as if discussing a real estate deal. During the pregnancy, you will stay at my mansion. You'll have 24-hour medical care and a dedicated staff. All necessities, including meals and clothing, will be provided. Olivia was at a loss for words. Matthew, unconcerned with her reaction, pressed on. The compensation after delivery will be $1 million. However, you will relinquish all rights to the child. Custody, visitation, everything will be outlined in the contract. Only the sound of rain hitting the high-rise windows broke the silence. This is a business proposition. There is no room for emotions. Matthew added calmly. You have talent in art. With this compensation, you can start a new life. Olivia's mind was in turmoil. The debts from her father's medical bills. Her homeless life. And now, the incredible offer presented to her. I don't need an immediate answer. Matthew stood up. Take 3 days to think. You're free to consult a lawyer during this time. 3 days. Olivia's voice was faintly shaky. Yes. I want your answer by noon, 3 days from now. Matthew handed her a piece of paper with his lawyer's contact information. Consult if necessary. I cannot wait any longer than that. Business requires swift decisions. The reception room door opened, and the secretary appeared. The unspoken instruction was to escort Olivia to the entrance. Make a wise decision. Matthew's final words were as cold as ice. Olivia stood up shakily, clutching the lawyer's contact information, and followed the secretary. Her steps on the plush carpet were unstable. As she rode the elevator down to the lobby, Olivia's heart was in turmoil. Her father's debts. A new life. Giving up a child. Everything swirled inside her. Matthew stood by the window, watching Olivia leave the entrance. His proposal was devoid of emotion, strictly businesslike. That was his way of life. And he had adhered to that principle once again. However, deep down, he felt a slight pang of pain, the nature of which even he couldn't understand. After leaving the Grant Enterprises building, Olivia sat down on a bench in a nearby small park. In her hands, she held the paper with Matthew Grant's lawyer's contact information, trembling slightly as she stared at it. Surrogacy. Just uttering the word made her chest tighten. As the park trees swayed in the wind, Olivia checked her belongings. A sketchbook, art supplies, and the pendant filled with memories of her father. Now homeless, these were all her possessions. Suddenly, her father's last words came back to her. Olivia, I want you to cherish your own life. But now, the proposal in front of her. $1 million. An amount that could repay all her debts. The possibility of starting a new life as an art teacher. Yet. To give up a child. Olivia shook her head. As a teacher who had worked with children, this was an unimaginable decision for her. Dark clouds spread across the sky. It would start raining soon. Olivia stood up and headed to her usual spot, a 24-hour coffee shop. It was one of the few places where the staff warmly welcomed her. The usual? A friendly smiling waitress greeted her. Olivia nodded and sat at a windowside table. With a warm coffee in front of her, she tried to organize her thoughts. Matthew Grant. Behind his cold demeanor, she felt there was a deep reason. What was the real reason he was seeking an heir? Why had he chosen her? Rain began to tap on the window. Olivia took out her art supplies and opened her sketchbook. When her thoughts were scattered, she always drew. It was what calmed her mind. The pencil glided over the paper. Unconsciously, she found herself drawing a portrait of Matthew. There was something lonely about his austere expression. Suddenly, Olivia snapped back to reality. It was already late into the night. 3 days. The time limit weighed heavily on her. Such a big decision, I can't make it right away. She murmured to herself as if talking to no one. The portrait of Matthew was complete in her sketchbook. Behind his cold expression, there was an indescribable loneliness. Olivia stared again at the lawyer's contact information. Perhaps she should call tomorrow. No, she needed to sort out her thoughts first. She sighed deeply. The hands of the clock mercilessly moved forward. The time until the 3-day deadline was quickly running out. Amidst this pressure, Olivia was forced to make a decision. 2 days after meeting with the lawyer, Olivia had made her decision. Rain began to fall outside as she entered a public phone booth and dialed Matthew Grant's office number. It's Grant. His cold voice came through the receiver. This is Olivia Walker. I've decided to accept your proposal. Her voice was slightly trembling. Understood. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. at my mansion. Matthew responded immediately, giving her the address. I'll arrange for a car. A few days later. At the Grant Mansion in a quiet, upscale residential area of Washington, D.C. The signing of the contract took place. In a study with a marble fireplace, Olivia carefully read through each document. The lawyer explained the terms of the contract. Conditions of the surrogacy, care during pregnancy, relinquishment of rights after birth, and the compensation. Everything was detailed explicitly. Please sign here, the lawyer pointed to the last page. Olivia picked up the pen and hesitated for a moment. Her father's smiling face flashed in her mind. Dad, this is my choice, she whispered inwardly and signed. Next is a health examination. Matthew stood up. My trusted doctor is here. Olivia was led to the next room, where a middle-aged female doctor warmly received her. A thorough consultation and examination began. Ms. Walker, have you had any major illnesses? No. Any family medical history? My mother passed away right after giving birth to me. Olivia faltered. The doctor smiled gently and changed the subject. Let's start with the basic tests. After completing the basic tests, the doctor smiled at Olivia. Your general health seems good. We'll need to verify the results of the blood tests, hormone tests, and a few other tests. The doctor spoke privately with Matthew in another room. Olivia waited on a sofa in the hallway. Her steps on the luxurious carpet were still slightly shaky. There doesn't seem to be any problem so far, the doctor emerged from the room and informed them. Detailed test results will be out in about 3 days, after which we can make a final decision. Matthew nodded expressionlessly. Let's proceed with preparations for you to stay here while we wait for the results, he said in a businesslike tone. I'll have everything you need prepared. If the test results are good, we'll move forward immediately. Olivia nodded silently. A new life was about to begin. Mixed feelings of anxiety and anticipation, she firmly resolved to pay off her father's medical debt and start anew. Outside the window, the spring sunlight brightly illuminated the garden after the rain. 1 week after all her test results were confirmed as good, Olivia began her life at the Grant mansion. As she entered, the head maid Eva Smith greeted her with a warm smile. "Welcome, Ms. Walker. Right this way." Eva, in her 50s, had an aura of reassurance. The grand staircase with elegant curves, antique furniture, and paintings on the walls were luxurious yet conveyed a somewhat lonely impression. "Your room is this way." Eva led her to a spacious room on the second floor. Cream-colored wallpaper, deep green curtains, and a large window overlooking a well-maintained garden. "If you need anything at all, please let me know." Eva's words carried genuine care. Afterward, she was given a tour of the mansion. The library, music room, and conservatory were luxurious spaces, but they felt scarcely used and somewhat cold. "This is..." Eva hesitantly opened a room that seemed like a small study. Olivia's eyes were drawn to a portrait hanging on the wall, half scorched by fire, depicting a young girl. "That's Mr. Grant's sister," Eva explained quietly. After the fire, this painting was all that remained. Olivia approached and stared at the painting. Beyond the burnt areas, the gentle smile of the girl could still be glimpsed. "This painting, it might be restorable." Olivia spoke without thinking. "No way," came a voice as she turned to see Matthew standing at the entrance to the room. His expression was unusually perturbed. "I have techniques taught by my father. Art houses a soul," that was his belief, Olivia continued, recalling the skills she had learned as an art teacher. "This portrait, too, definitely houses a soul, your sister's." Matthew silently approached and stared at the charred portrait. "Restoration will take time, but surely. Please try." Matthew's voice was softer than usual. For the next few days, Olivia continued the restoration work with meticulous care, occasionally observed by Matthew. Initially, his visits were brief, but gradually, he stayed longer. Sophia loved to draw. Matthew suddenly shared one day. She always carried a sketchbook with her. Olivia paused her work and listened quietly. Matthew's voice had a warmth she had not heard before. "When I was reading, she often drew pictures of me," he reminisced with a smile. "She was really good at drawing." As Olivia worked on the restoration, she remembered her father's words. "Art has the power to heal hearts." Eva quietly left the room. Outside the door, their conversation continued. Having worked in the mansion for years, she could feel the ice in Matthew's heart slowly melting. About 2 months after Olivia began her life at the Grant mansion, she waited in the study for Matthew after her morning examination. Outside the window, early summer sunlight brightly illuminated the trees in the garden. "You are indeed pregnant," the doctor reported, to which Matthew quietly nodded. "Congratulations," the doctor added, and Olivia instinctively placed her hand on her abdomen. After the doctor left, a silence fell over the room. Matthew stood by the window, gazing outside, his posture suggesting deep thought. "Please call Eva," he eventually spoke quietly. When head maid Eva entered, Matthew began giving instructions without looking up from the documents. "Please prepare Olivia's room with bedding and chairs suitable for a pregnant woman. And..." He paused, choosing his words, "tailor it to her preferences." Eva smiled faintly. "Of course." "Olivia, do you have any preferences for colors?" "Yes, I like calm colors. Blues, greens." Olivia responded, and Eva took detailed notes. "And..." Matthew added. "New art supplies as well. For both restoration and her personal use." Olivia looked up, surprised that he had considered even art supplies for her hobbies. "Any dietary restrictions advised by the doctor?" Matthew's tone remained businesslike but felt somewhat softer than before. "Yes, I've already consulted a nutritionist," Eva replied. "We will prepare meals suitable for pregnant women." "What about exercise?" "We'll maintain the walking paths in the garden. Add more shaded benches." Matthew nodded, then continued. "Check the emergency contact system too. It should be available 24/7. That might be a bit much." Olivia interjected modestly. For the first time, Matthew turned towards her and said earnestly, "Your health is a priority in this agreement." Although his words were professional, Olivia heard them differently. Beneath the businesslike demeanor, there seemed to be something else. As Eva confirmed more detailed precautions, such as room temperature control, adequate exercise, and fresh fruit supply, her experience and careful attention were evident in every detail. "I'll get started on the preparations right away," Eva said as she left the room. Olivia felt comforted by her kind smile. Once alone, Matthew pulled a book from a drawer. "This is a medical book about pregnancy and childbirth. Please read it." "Thank you," Olivia said, taking the book, noticing a slight tremor in Matthew's fingers. "If you need anything else, don't hesitate to ask," he said before leaving the study. Standing by the window, book in hand, Olivia pondered her new life about to begin. Outside, Eva was already directing workers to improve the walking paths. The early summer breeze seemed to whisper of new beginnings, quietly blowing through the garden. 2 months later, Olivia was in the Grant Mansion's medical room for a routine checkup. Summer sunlight filtered through white curtains, softly illuminating the room. Matthew, as usual, was present during his break from work. "Let's start the ultrasound," the doctor switched on the monitor. Olivia lay nervously on the examination table while Matthew watched from a corner, arms crossed. "Ah." Suddenly, the doctor stopped. "What's wrong?" Anxiety tinged Olivia's voice. The doctor stared at the screen, then carefully spoke. "Please wait a moment." At that, Matthew stepped forward. "Is there a problem?" "No, there is no problem," the doctor said with a smile. "The baby is, actually, there are 2. "What?" Olivia's eyes widened in surprise. "Twins," the doctor explained while pointing at the screen. "Here's one, and here's another." Matthew approached the screen silently, his usually calm expression now filled with astonishment as he looked at the ultrasound images. "Twins." Olivia, still in disbelief, placed her hand on her abdomen. "Both are developing well," the doctor continued. "Their heartbeats are normal. It's too early to determine their genders, but we might be able to tell at the next checkup." Matthew remained silent, continuing to stare at the small shadows on the screen. His expression was a mix of confusion, anxiety, and an indescribable emotion. "Mr. Grant," the doctor called out. "With twins, we need to manage more carefully than usual. It will be a greater burden on Olivia. Do whatever is necessary." Matthew's voice trembled slightly. "Cost is not an issue." Olivia noticed Matthew's reaction. It seemed as if his usual mask of a ruthless businessman had slipped for a moment. "Let me explain what you need to watch out for going forward," the doctor began, and Matthew quickly started taking notes. His actions had a sense of urgency. With twins, rest is particularly crucial. And nutritional management is important as well. As Olivia listened to the explanation, her mind was filled with complex emotions. The contract had been for 1 child, yet now she was carrying 2 lives. "Tell Eva to start preparing immediately," Matthew said after finishing the discussion with the doctor and started to leave the room. "Matthew," Olivia called out, surprising herself by using his first name for the first time. "It's okay, I can." Matthew stopped and turned around. His eyes showed a fluctuation of emotions that were usually hidden. "Yes. I believe it will be all right too." His words seemed to carry more than just a contractual reassurance. Late at night, a few days after discovering the twins, Olivia stood on the balcony overlooking the garden, unable to sleep. "You're still awake," came a quiet voice. Turning around, Olivia saw Eva holding a warm cup of tea. "I can't sleep." Olivia smiled apologetically. "Chamomile tea is good for relaxation," Eva said, handing her the cup and sitting next to her. "Thank you." Olivia cradled the fragrant tea in her hands. "Eva, do you think I can do it?" "Do what?" Eva asked gently. "Bring twins into the world safely." Olivia touched her abdomen. The contract was for one baby, and now with twins, if something happens. I have twin grandchildren. Eva said with a calm smile. My daughter gave birth to them. They're 8 years old now. Olivia looked up in surprise. It was full of worries at first. But twins are miraculous. Eva continued thoughtfully. From the womb, they support each other. It's the same after they are born. But the expectations from Matthew must be high, as heirs to this estate. Mr. Grant has been changing. Eva stated quietly. He's been smiling more lately. Really? Olivia exclaimed. Yes. Especially since you started restoring his sister's portrait. Eva gazed distantly. He hasn't let anyone close for nearly 30 years. But now. Olivia sipped her tea quietly. Indeed, she had noticed a gradual change in Matthew's demeanor. And, Eva added, since finding out about the twins, he's been reading parenting books every night. No way. In his study, where he thinks no one sees him. Eva smiled gently. But I've noticed the books piled on his desk when I clean in the morning. Under the moonlight, Olivia's cheeks turned red. We are here for you. Eva reassured her. Everyone in this house cares deeply about you and the babies. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. And Eva gently took Olivia's hand. You have a wonderful talent. Your portrait work shows it. With your delicate sensibility, you will surely listen to the voices of your babies. Eva. It's late now. Let's get some rest. Eva said as she stood up. Tomorrow morning, Matthew has a consultation planned with the nutritionist. I wonder what he'll have prepared for you next. Olivia smiled faintly. Indeed, Matthew had been issuing daily new instructions, ostensibly to perfectly fulfill the contract. Thank you, Eva. Olivia said gratefully as they walked back to her room. Good night. Eva's kind voice melted into the stillness of the night. As the moonlight streamed through the window, Olivia was able to fall asleep peacefully for the first time, accompanied by the two small lives within her. In the greenhouse of the Grant mansion, bathed in morning sunlight, Olivia had her sketchbook open. She sat in a comfortable chair that Matthew had specially installed, slowly drawing the lush foliage and colorful flowers. Breakfast is ready. Eva quietly informed her. It's a beautiful day, how about having it on the terrace? That sounds lovely. Olivia said, attempting to stand up. Eva gently supported her, as her belly had been growing day by day. On their way to the terrace, looking down at the garden through the corridor window, Olivia noticed workers beginning to install a small fountain. Last week, she had mentioned how the sound of water was calming, and Matthew had remembered. Upon reaching the terrace, Matthew was already there, reading the newspaper while having breakfast. Good morning, his voice had lost its former coldness. Good morning, Matthew. Olivia responded as she took her seat, and Eva brought over some warm soup. I saw this morning's ultrasound photos. Matthew looked up from his newspaper. Both are looking healthy. Yes, a girl and a boy. Olivia said with a smile. Eva is preparing 2 rooms for the babies. Yes, I've seen them. Matthew hesitated for a moment, then added. I'd like to hear your thoughts too. Olivia looked up in surprise. Until now, the preparation of the rooms had been entirely one-sided. Actually, Olivia carefully chose her words. I was thinking that the wallpaper could be in a lighter color. Choose any color you like. Matthew replied promptly, and Olivia felt a warmth in her heart. After breakfast, the two of them toured the baby rooms. As Olivia commented on colors and designs, Matthew listened attentively, occasionally asking professional questions. This wooden furniture was made in a workshop in Virginia. Eva explained. Mr. Grant specially ordered it. Olivia's eyes moistened unexpectedly. Matthew had chosen something from her home state. In the afternoon, as Olivia read a parenting book in the library, Matthew appeared during a break from his work. Is there anything you need? No, it's more than enough. Olivia smiled. This really is a wonderful environment. Matthew gazed out the window and said, I want to provide the best environment for the children. These words stirred Olivia's heart. The contract had predetermined a separation from the children. But if they were to grow up in this environment, she felt reassured, even surprised by her own thoughts. At dusk, Olivia sat in front of the portrait she was restoring. Sophia's smile was gradually returning. It's coming along well. Matthew observed from behind. Yes, it's almost complete. Olivia turned around to see a gentle smile in Matthew's eyes. Thank you. Those words seemed to mean more than just about the portrait. At night, lying in bed, Olivia felt a change in her own feelings. What started as merely a contractual agreement was now something more. She gently stroked her abdomen. In this place, she whispered softly, they will surely grow up happy. Outside the window, the full moon shone brightly, and the garden fountain quietly played its tune. A new hope was sprouting in Olivia's heart. As a summer evening storm passed, Olivia sat in her room opening an old sketchbook. It was filled with drawings from the days her father was ill. The light coming through the hospital window, the sound of the drip, her father's increasingly gaunt profile. She had desperately captured those days. A knock sounded, and Matthew entered the room. How are you feeling? Fine, thank you. Olivia responded, and Matthew's gaze fell on the sketchbook. What is that? Drawings from when my father was in the hospital. Olivia said quietly. I couldn't help drawing it. The fear of losing someone important, and the pain. Matthew's expression froze. Olivia worried she might have touched on a forbidden topic, but resolved to continue. Look, she turned the page. This is when my father was sleeping. Even in pain, he had such a peaceful expression. Matthew silently moved closer to the sketchbook. I was able to be by my father's side until the end. But Matthew. Olivia carefully selected her words. You weren't given that chance. Matthew's shoulders trembled slightly. While restoring Sophia's portrait, I've always felt it. Olivia continued quietly. The indescribable pain inside you. A long silence followed. The scent of wet earth drifted in from the garden after the rain. That day, Matthew suddenly began, his voice quivering. I couldn't save my sister. The smoke was too thick. I could hear her voice. Olivia listened in silence. My parents, too, couldn't even call out. Matthew stood by the window, looking out at the rain-soaked garden. I decided then that I never wanted to lose someone important again. So, I chose not to let anyone close. But it was lonely. Matthew turned around, tears glistening in his eyes. But I thought it was the only way to protect myself. Olivia stood up and gently touched Matthew's arm. I understand the fear of losing someone important. But maybe having the courage to form new bonds is just as important. Olivia placed her hand on her abdomen. These children taught me that. Matthew looked at Olivia, puzzled. Look. Olivia opened another sketchbook. It contained drawings from the past few months at the Grant estate. Eva's kind smile, the beautiful flowers in the garden, and Matthew working in his study. This is new memories. New bonds. Olivia smiled. Perhaps we've both been denying ourselves the chance to gain something valuable by being too afraid to lose. Matthew touched the sketchbook pages with trembling hands, seeing expressions of himself he didn't recognize, his gaze softening, sometimes even a gentle smile. Olivia. Matthew's voice was more emotional than ever. It feels strange. Outside the window, the setting sun bathed the post-rain garden in golden light. On an autumn afternoon, with the breeze heralding the season's change, an unexpected visitor arrived at the Grant estate. It's been a while, Lady Victoria. Eva greeted the woman at the entrance, who, despite her sophisticated attire, exuded a sharp aura. "Where is Matthew?" Victoria Hartford, possessing a sultry charm unusual for her 35 years, inquired. "Unfortunately, Mr. Grant is out at the moment." "Is that so?" Victoria smiled meaningfully. "Then I'll wait for his return." As Victoria entered the mansion, she moved around as if it were her own home, speaking to the maids one after another. "Is it true that a young woman has been living here lately? What about Matthew's heir?" The maids, puzzled, still responded politely to the master's cousin. At that moment, Olivia appeared in the corridor on the second floor, her pregnancy evident in her flowing dress. Victoria's eyes sharpened. "Oh, you must be." "Hello." Olivia greeted calmly. "I'm Olivia Walker." "Victoria Hartford." "Matthew's cousin." Victoria's voice contained clear hostility. "I didn't expect the rumors to be true." Eva, tense, stood between them. "Lady Victoria, may I get you some tea?" "No need." Victoria waved dismissively. "A surrogate mother, then? How much are you being paid?" Olivia silently placed her hand on her belly. "To bear Matthew's children." Victoria's voice trembled. "It should have been me, only me." The air in the mansion tensed as if frozen. Instinctively sensing danger, Olivia tried to leave. "Take care." Eva moved to accompany Olivia down the stairs. "Wait." Victoria chased after Olivia. "You." It happened in an instant. On the marble staircase, Victoria's hand forcefully pushed Olivia's back. Twisting her body to protect her abdomen, Olivia tumbled down the stairs. "Olivia!" Eva's scream echoed through the mansion. As maids rushed to help, Olivia lay unconscious, having struck her left arm and ribs hard. Blood flowed from her forehead. "Call an ambulance." "Now." Eva's voice shook. "And contact Mr. Grant." From atop the staircase, Victoria looked down coldly. However, a flicker of disturbance crossed her face when she noticed the security camera. The mansion awaited the ambulance's arrival in tense silence. As the ambulance sirens wailed, Matthew rushed to the hospital. His usual composure was gone, his forehead slick with sweat. "How is Olivia?" Matthew's voice shook as he approached Eva waiting outside the emergency room. "She's currently being examined." "The twins?" Eva's voice broke off as the doctor emerged from the room. "Mr. Grant," the doctor quickly began explaining. "Ms. Walker has regained consciousness. She's had some stitches for a head wound, but fortunately, it's minor." Matthew's tense features softened slightly. "There are fractures in her left arm and left ribs. However," the doctor smiled slightly, "she managed to protect the fetuses brilliantly during the fall. She shielded her abdomen with both hands and fell on her left side to minimize the impact. Her quick thinking saved the babies' lives." Matthew was at a loss for words. The first thing she asked when she woke up was, "Are the babies okay?" a nurse added. "Can I see her?" There was an urgency in Matthew's voice that had never been heard before. The doctor nodded and led Matthew to the room. In the white hospital room, Olivia was lying down with her left arm immobilized. Her forehead was bandaged, and there were scrapes on her face, but she managed a weak smile. "Matthew. I'm sorry for worrying you." "Don't apologize." Matthew took Olivia's right hand with his trembling hand. "I can't believe this happened, in my own house." "The babies are safe," Olivia said quietly. "It's strange. My body moved on its own during the fall." Matthew choked up, moved by her maternal strength. However, the attending physician entered the room and spoke up. "She absolutely must remain at rest now. She needs to stay calm for the remainder of the pregnancy. Whatever is needed." Matthew's voice was firm again. "The best medical team." "No, rather." Olivia whispered softly. "Could you stay with me a little longer?" Matthew gasped. "Of course, I will also stay by your side." Eva entered the room. and other staff members will take turns. The evening light filtered through the hospital room window. Olivia closed her eyes quietly, and Matthew did not let go of her hand. "Mr. Grant," the doctor addressed him. "Mental stability is crucial for her recovery. Stress must be avoided at all costs." Matthew nodded silently. His eyes reflected anger, relief, and a burgeoning new emotion. Outside the window, the autumn breeze stirred the trees at the hospital. As Olivia's breathing softly echoed in the room, Matthew continued to hold her hand, gazing intently at her face. 2 days after Olivia was hospitalized, Matthew was in the study at the Grant estate, facing the police officers. The monitor on the desk displayed the security camera footage of the incident. "The video clearly shows an intentional assault," a detective explained quietly. "Given that the victim is pregnant, this will be treated as aggravated assault." Eva began her testimony. Lady Victoria began interrogating Ms. Walker about her presence in the mansion as soon as she entered. Then, other maids testified about how Victoria had roamed the mansion gathering information about Olivia, her comments, and the events leading up to the incident. "Her father contacted me." Matthew's legal advisor spread out the documents. "Victoria has been eyeing the management rights of Grant Enterprises for a while. She hoped to marry you and bear your children." Matthew's expression hardened. "She betrayed my trust as my cousin." "The complaint is ready," the lawyer continued. "The security footage, witness testimonies, and clear motive all point to a likely conviction." "What are Ms. Walker's wishes?" the detective asked. "I haven't spoken to Olivia yet," Matthew responded, looking out the window. "Right now, her rest is most important. I don't want to stress her." "Understood. We'll proceed from our side, but..." "Wait." Eva interrupted. When Olivia awoke, she said something. All eyes turned to Eva. "I can't forgive, but I don't want to be trapped by hatred. For the sake of these children." The room fell silent. Matthew sighed deeply. "Still, she must be held legally accountable. This isn't just about feelings, it's about justice." The lawyer nodded. "We're ready to submit to the court. Assault on a pregnant woman is a serious crime. The police will handle it with utmost severity," the detective stood. "With that, we'll take our leave." As people exited the room, Matthew remained alone in the study. The documents on the desk detailed Victoria's ambitious plans to seize his fortune, disrupted by Olivia's presence. "Mr. Grant." Eva spoke softly. "It's almost time for visiting hours at the hospital." Matthew looked up, his face set with a determined resolve. "Eva, thank you," he said as he stood. "I must protect Olivia properly." His words echoed like a vow. Months later, at the Washington, D.C. courthouse, as the verdict against Victoria Hartford was being delivered, Matthew was already at the hospital. Today was the scheduled day for the twin cesarean section. "Everything is prepared for the surgery," the chief surgeon began. "Considering the impact of the rib fractures from the accident, we've chosen the safest possible approach." In front of the operating room, Olivia, dressed for surgery, expressed her fears. "Matthew, I'm scared." Matthew firmly grasped her hand as she unusually voiced her anxiety. "It's okay. This time, I'll protect you." His voice carried a strong resolve. In the operating room, a highly experienced medical team was ready: anesthesiologists, neonatologists, and several nurses. Everything was prepared for the delivery of the twins. "Let's begin," said the lead surgeon. Matthew, dressed in surgical attire, sat by Olivia's head, holding her hand throughout. "How is the spinal anesthesia feeling?" asked the anesthesiologist carefully. "It's fine." Olivia's voice trembled slightly. As the surgery began and soon after, "We can see the first child," announced the surgeon, tensing the atmosphere in the room. "It's a girl." "The first child, Isabella," cried out. The neonatologist immediately began procedures. Next, the second child. A few minutes later, Oliver was also born safely, both crying healthily. Congratulations, a nurse showed the wrapped twins to them. They are very healthy babies. Tears fell from Matthew's eyes. How wonderful. Both are safe. Olivia also smiled through tears. After the surgery ended and Olivia was moved to the recovery room, as the anesthesia wore off, pain began to set in, but her eyes were filled with happiness as she looked at her twins. You'll need to rest for a while, the doctor explained. Cesarean wounds take time to heal. I'll stay with you. Eva entered the room. Please leave the baby's care to me. Outside, snow quietly began to fall. In the warmth of the hospital room, the breath of new life could be felt. Isabella and Oliver. Matthew murmured, looking at the twins. I will make sure you're happy. Olivia smiled tiredly. The pain from the surgery was overwhelmed by the anticipation of a joyful future. Congratulations. Eva approached and admired the twins. They truly are beautiful babies. Matthew, looking at Olivia and their two babies, vowed in his heart never again to lose his loved ones. Instead of fearing loss, he vowed to protect. As snowflakes accumulated on the window glass, a new family story was about to begin. A week after being discharged on a peaceful morning, Olivia quietly packed her belongings in her room. The twins were sleeping next door, watched over by Eva. She read the last page of the contract again. Within 1 week after birth, you must relinquish all rights. The words constricted her heart. You're getting ready, I see. Eva entered the room, her expression hiding a poignant thought. Yes, I'm almost done. Olivia attempted a smile, but her voice quivered. How are the babies? Sleeping well. Isabella makes a face just like her father. Olivia stopped packing. Indeed, Isabella's brow bore a resemblance to Matthew, and Oliver's eyes resembled Sophia's in her youth. As per the contract, today I must. She couldn't continue. Suddenly, a baby's cry was heard. Maternal instincts kicking in, Olivia instinctively stood up but then stopped herself. She no longer had the right. Go to them. Eva gently pushed her back. You're still needed. As Olivia moved towards the baby's room, she unexpectedly ran into Matthew in the hallway. He was holding a stack of documents. Olivia. Matthew's voice lacked its usual coldness. There's something I need to discuss. Led to the study, Olivia stood by the window. She was about to say goodbye to this view. The garden below, which had inspired many of her paintings, was still in bloom. This is the original contract. Matthew pulled out the documents. Yes, I am ready to. But Matthew interrupted her, holding the contract with both hands, and then. The sound of tearing filled the room. Matthew. Olivia's eyes widened as he ripped the contract apart, letting the pieces fall to the floor. We don't need this anymore. Matthew said quietly. But. Olivia, he stepped closer. If it weren't for you, I'd still be living encased in ice. Olivia gasped. Since you began restoring Sophia's portrait, I've been realizing. Matthew continued. How much I've kept away what's precious to me out of fear of losing it. A baby's cry echoed again. Isabella and Oliver need their mother. Matthew hesitated, then declared with resolve. And I need a wife. Matthew. As the evening sun painted the garden gold, new possibilities began to bloom for them, just like the flowers below. This is a proposal for a new contract. Matthew slowly knelt down. This time, it's a contract of love. Tears overflowed from Olivia's eyes. Will you marry me? Matthew's voice trembled. I want you to walk through life with me and our children. The scraps of the contract littered the floor of the study. Olivia stared at Matthew, who was kneeling amidst them in disbelief. Matthew, really? Olivia's voice shook. I've never been more certain of anything. Matthew's eyes held a firm resolve. You've taught me that it's more important to cherish than to fear losing. The baby's cries could be heard again, this time their voices overlapping. Let's go to them. Olivia said. Together. Matthew stood up and took her hand. In the twins' room, Eva was gently soothing Isabella and Oliver. When they entered, she gave a meaningful smile and quietly left the room. Our treasures. Matthew looked into the crib. I hope they grow up with a kind heart like yours and a sense for the arts. And they'll need your strength and decisiveness. Olivia smiled. But first. I didn't get your answer yet. Matthew knelt again before Olivia. Marry me, will you? With tears in her eyes, Olivia nodded. Yes. I'd love to. Matthew stood to embrace her, but the twins started crying in unison. They both laughed. Now, you too. Olivia picked up the twins. It's Mom and Dad's important moment. We'll raise them together. Matthew said. With you by my side, certainly. Yes. Olivia handed Isabella to Matthew. Let's gradually learn about each other. The good and the not so good. I might have quite a few shortcomings. Matthew chuckled self-deprecatingly. Like expressing emotions and interacting with people. Then I'll teach you. Olivia smiled gently. Just like you've taught me about business, decisiveness, and strength. Outside, the garden flowers swayed in the wind. Sophia's restored portrait quietly smiled from the wall of the study. A new family beginning. Olivia murmured. Yes. Matthew replied, gazing at Isabella in his arms. And this isn't a contract. It's a vow. Eva, who might have been listening, knocked and entered with a bottle of champagne for celebration. Congratulations, her eyes sparkled with tears of joy. Thank you, Eva, they both said in unison. The morning sun filled the room, warmly enveloping the new family. 3 months after the wedding, in the middle of the night at the Grant Estate's master bedroom, the cry of a baby echoed. It's my turn now. Olivia began to rise, but Matthew placed his hand on her shoulder. No, I'm in charge of Oliver's night wakings, he was already getting up. You get up for Isabella's feedings, so rest a bit more. As he walked down the hallway at midnight, Matthew smiled. He could never have imagined such an irregular life before, but now, even the twins' cries felt dear to him. What's the matter, son? He cooed as he picked up Oliver. Oh, Mr. Grant. Eva had also heard the baby and came. Shall I take over? It's okay. Matthew cradled Oliver in his arms and rocked him gently. I want to do what I can as a father. Hours later, as dawn approached, Isabella signaled her hunger. Here I am, Mommy's here. Olivia said after feeding her, when Matthew entered with some documents. I have to discuss today's schedule, he began, and Isabella suddenly smiled. Ah, she recognizes your voice. Olivia said happily. Lately, both of them react so much to it. Matthew's face softened. Actually, I've changed all my meetings to online for the day. Isn't it the twins' vaccination day? Yes, but I can handle it alone. Eva will accompany me. No, I'll come too. Matthew showed her the schedule. I've adjusted everything for the week. Olivia looked at her husband moved. The once ruthless businessman had transformed into a devoted father. Ah, breakfast is ready. Eva opened the terrace door. This morning, I made Mr. Grant's favorite French toast. After our marriage, you've really stepped up. Olivia smiled. Yes, I've come to enjoy family meals more. Eva replied proudly. During breakfast, the twins started crying at the same time. Even their timing is in sync. Olivia laughed. That afternoon, on the way home from vaccinations, Matthew was driving and watching the sleeping twins in the rearview mirror. They both did well today. Olivia spoke from the back seat, watching over the twins. You did great too. Matthew gazed at his wife. Our family, we are truly happy. Yes, this is what family is. It may not be perfect. There may be confusion and failures. But supporting each other, learning together, and growing together, that's the real happiness Matthew had long been searching for. On a sunny Sunday morning in Washington, D.C., the Grant family's garden was gently lit. Isabella, Oliver. If you run around too much, breakfast will get cold. Olivia called out to the twins, now 8 years old. But Mom, I just thought of a new composition for my painting. Isabella ran over, sketchbook in hand. I'll help too. Oliver followed his sister. Matthew watched the children with a smile. Isabella was showing artistic talent like her mother, and Oliver was analytical and thoughtful like his father. It feels like just yesterday. Olivia picked up her coffee cup. It's been 8 years since we first shared breakfast in this garden. Yes. Matthew took his wife's hand. Back then, I was still living in ice. How's the coffee this morning? Eva brought over a new pot. Despite the years, her smile remained unchanged. I made the blend from 8 years ago. Eva, you remembered? Olivia was moved. Of course. Back then, Mr. Grant didn't even care about the taste of his coffee. Eva smiled meaningfully. Now, he selects beans to suit your taste. Dad, look. Oliver ran up. The painting I made with the kids at the art center, it's going to be in the school exhibition. The Art Therapy Center for Children Experiencing Loss, initiated by Olivia's idea 3 years ago, continues to thrive. Olivia still works there 3 days a week as an art teacher. I want to be a teacher like Mom, Isabella said earnestly. Matthew gently stroked his daughter's head. Olivia is a wonderful teacher. I've learned a lot from her. But Matthew is also an indispensable teacher to the children at the center, Olivia said proudly. Especially with the business school program. Grant Enterprises provides vocational training opportunities for the center's children, helping them build new futures, not just mourn what's lost, a shared vision of Matthew and Olivia. Dad, are you coming to the center this Sunday too? Oliver looked up at him with hopeful eyes. Yes, it's a promise. Matthew smiled broadly. Eva rearranged the warm breakfast as the twins began to run around the garden again. Matthew. Olivia squeezed her husband's hand. Happy? I don't know how to be so happy. Matthew looked at his wife. Sometimes it scares me. Me too. Olivia smiled. But we've learned, haven't we? To choose love over fear of loss. In the garden, Isabella began a new painting, taking inspiration from Sophia's portrait, while Oliver seriously advised her at her side. Beautiful morning. Eva murmured. Yes. Olivia responded. May many more mornings like this follow. Matthew watched the scene unfold, his heart once frozen, now filled with the warmth of his loving family. The spring sunlight tenderly enveloped the happy family.